Nigeria's first coup, the night that changed everything. Imagine a country full of promise. Nigeria, fresh from independence in 1960, was the pride of Africa. Streets were filled with excitement, flags waving high, voices singing songs of freedom. Hope filled the air like the sweet scent of the Harmattan breeze. But beneath this joy, a storm was brewing. Not everyone was dancing. Not everyone was smiling. In dark corners, whispers of anger grew louder. The government that once promised prosperity had become a playground for the rich and powerful. The common man? Forgotten. Then came the 1965 elections, a disaster. Ballot boxes were stuffed. Votes were stolen. Protests turned violent. People died. The streets of Lagos, Kaduna, and Ibadan burned with anger. Some prayed for change. Others planned it. Far from the corrupt politicians, in Nigeria's military barracks, young officers watched their country decay. They had sworn to defend the nation, yet they saw greedy men destroy it. These soldiers were educated, disciplined, and patriotic. They had trained in Britain, India, and Pakistan. They had seen how nations should be run. And they had seen enough. Among them was Major Chukwuma Kaduna Nzeogwu. At 29 years old, he was fearless, disciplined, and bold. Born in the north, but Igbo by blood, he was known for his strict lifestyle. He did not drink. He did not party. While others celebrated, he studied books on war, politics, and revolutions. He was a soldier, but in his heart, he was a reformer. He and his fellow officers, Major Ifejuna, Major Okafor, Major Anufero, Major Adamoyaga, and Major Chukwuka, believed Nigeria was dying. And like surgeons in an emergency room, they were ready to cut out the disease. Their mission? Remove corrupt leaders. Cleanse Nigeria. Rebuild it. But they were about to learn that in politics, there are no easy solutions. They called it Operation Demisa, the Leopard Strike. It was simple, precise, and deadly. At exactly midnight on January 15, 1966, teams of soldiers would move in 3 key cities. Lagos, capture Prime Minister Tafawa Balewa. Kaduna, kill Ahmadu Bello, the Sardaunar of Sokoto. Ibadan, eliminate Chief Akintola, the Premier of the West. Military bases, arrest or kill senior officers who might resist. They believed they were saving Nigeria. They believed they were the heroes. But history would judge them differently. As the clock struck 12, darkness swallowed Nigeria. The streets were silent, but the shadows were alive. Men with rifles moved swiftly, their boots barely making a sound. In Kaduna, Nzeogwu led his men to the grand mansion of Sir Ahmadu Bello, the Sardaunar of Sokoto. His house was heavily guarded. After all, he was the most powerful man in the north. But the soldiers were faster. Gunfire exploded in the night. Guards fell. The mansion doors burst open. Inside, the Sardaunar stood tall. He did not scream. He did not beg. His wives and children huddled in fear. Then, the shots came. Blood stained the white walls. The Sardaunar, the Lion of the North, was dead. In Ibadan, Premier Chief Akintola did not go down quietly. He was a fighter. The moment he heard soldiers approaching, he grabbed his rifle. He fired. Bullets flew through his house. But it was no use. He was outnumbered. The soldiers stormed in. More gunfire. Silence followed. In Lagos, Prime Minister Tafawa Balewa was taken from his home. He did not resist. He was calm, even in the face of death. They drove him away, deep into the night. Days later, his lifeless body was found by the roadside. By dawn, Nigeria's government was gone. The young officers had succeeded. But their greatest mistake was just beginning. There was one man they had not planned for, Major General Johnson Aguiyi-Ironsi, the highest-ranking officer in the Nigerian army. A man of power. A man of strategy. While the young officers celebrated, Ironsi made his move. In a swift counterattack, he crushed the coup. Soldiers loyal to him surrounded the rebels. Within hours, the tables had turned. The coup leaders surrendered. Their revolution had lasted only a few hours. But its consequences would last forever. For 6 months, Nigeria held its breath. The new leader, Aguiyi-Ironsi, tried to unite the country. But something dark was brewing. The North was angry. They saw the coup as an Igbo conspiracy. Most of the dead leaders were Northern. The coup leaders? Mostly Igbo. The whispers of revenge became shouts of war. On July 29, 1966, Northern officers struck back. It was brutal. It was bloody. Ironsi was dragged from his home and beaten to death. In military camps across the north, Igbo officers were slaughtered. Thousands of Igbo civilians were killed in the streets. The coup that was meant to save Nigeria had instead torn it apart. The bloodshed of 1966 did not end there. It planted the seeds of a greater war, the Biafra War. It led to decades of military rule, coups, and violence. Nigeria, the land of hope, had become a land of sorrow. Even today, the scars remain. The houses where it all happened still stand. The streets where leaders fell still exist. But the dream of unity, the hope of independence, was buried that night. One night. 30 soldiers. 7 hours. 58 years of consequences. History is not just stories from the past. It is a lesson for the future. But what happens when we keep learning the wrong lessons? Here's the crazy thing: in many of the problems those young officers wanted to fix, corruption, poverty, election rigging, they're still around today. Makes you wonder, what really changed that night in 1966? But maybe the biggest lesson isn't about what they did wrong. Maybe it's about how trying to fix things with violence usually leads to more violence. About how one night's decisions can haunt a country for generations. Next time you hear someone say they can fix a country overnight, remember the story of Nigeria's first coup. Nigeria is still searching for the answer.